I clicked the wrong one.
Won't do it.
All right, we are live. The screen that you guys saw there for a second was one where I was trying to get us all in a row, and it did not put us all in a row. It put us in like this.
No, that looks cool.
Okay. Anyway,
I watched it happen.
We're live. Welcome to Omnipotent Beard. Here with Wolf the Red and Ryan Dennison.
Oh.
Ryan is a writer and a personal friend of ours that knows his way. Is writing a book on the history of heathenry in America. So I guess Ryan, tell us a little bit about yourself, man.
Right. Well, I've been pagan since about 2000 or so, and came to heathenry really about 2005-ish, somewhere through there, after I tried to stay away from it because of all the negative stigmatisms that we all know exist.
Right.
It kind of kept me away. But, Odin kept like pounding on the...
As he does.
the door.
I know there's a couple people in the chat who are going to agree with you on that one.
Yeah. So then I've been involved in the pagan community kind of out and about since then. Helped to organize Mystic South in Atlanta. My part of that is
You should explain what Mystic South is.
Oh, yeah.
How big it is and all.
No, I didn't even think about
stuff
that before.
do.
Definitely tell us all about that.
So Mystic South is a pagan polytheist conference that we started putting on in 2016. We went for 3 years before pandemic hit. Last year we didn't, of course, have it. This year we haven't made the decision. The board hasn't really made a decision yet. We're kind of waiting to see some things, but
yeah,
I don't know how it's
a pretty big conference.
Yeah, like we've grown. We've started. Yeah, pagan. It's for the general pagan community, right? So lots of different groups there. Do
you know an attendance number off the top of your head from previous years?
Right. So the first year we had about 300 to 400 attendants, and we've grown up to between 600 and 1,000 in the last year that we had, and that was between people staying at the hotel and then people just coming and going in the Atlanta area.
Yep.
Right. And we were set to have probably between 1,200 to 1,500 attendees over the 3 days. Last year's what we were kind of projected at, and then of course all this stuff hit. So
for us, that's really casual to say, like, oh yeah, we had 1,000, maybe 1,200 pagans in one area, and there are people who are like, I'm the only pagan I know.
Right.
It's like,
yeah.
You can't get on a bus in Atlanta without sitting with 10 other pagans.
Yeah. And you don't know unless you ask or you're
exactly
something out, right? Because a lot of us are still in the closet because we live in the deep South, and there's job implications to that. There's all sorts of things that could go wrong.
And you came out in the South as a heathen. Like, tell us a little bit about that. Like, how did that go?
Right. So, because
you're really public about the fact that you're.
Yeah. I'm really open with it, and that really kind of come about because of Mystic South, and I've started my end of Mystic South, or what I deal with is the Pagan and Polytheist Educational Research Symposium, or PAPERS, which is kind of an academic. I wanted to focus on the academic aspect of it and try to bridge the gap between academia and the general pagan public to disseminate information and teach and that sort of thing. So it's that's been kind of my passion since I am a teacher. And I teach at a large metro area high school, also adjunct at a local college. I teach U.S. history and have since I started teaching in 2000.
Cool.
So I'm just starting into my 21st year. And because of Mystic South and Papers, I was interviewed in The Wild Hunt by Dr. Carl Siegfried about the whole entire thing and being heathen in the South. And I just decided at the time that, I'm I'm just going to use my regular name. And
Right.
I am lucky. I will say that I'm privileged in the fact of that I teach at a large metro area high school that is incredibly diverse. And so that helps insulate me quite a bit. Now, if I would have been teaching at a more rural school in the South, I would have probably have shied away from that stuff. But I just decided if we are going to change heathenry in America, people need to see us.
Right.
I agree.
Yeah. And people need to see our actions, and people need to see what we're about. And the only way to do that is to just, be me.
Right.
And so that's what I did in the interview, and that's how I just came out of the Mjolnir closet.
So wait, getting an interview with the Wild Hunt was kind of how you came out as a heathen,
yeah.
And then you just started being like, I'm not hiding this anymore.
Right. Yeah. I just used my regular name, and the cool thing about it is that I was sitting in my room during my planning period, and knock on my door, and then one of my fellow teachers came in and was like, I read about you in the Wild Hunt.
That's hilarious.
And I was like,
it's so funny. It's like, maybe nobody will notice.
Yeah. But then I had that moment of, oh hell, what is this going to be about? Is this going to be like one of those, he's going to try to convert me type deals, proselyte? Turns out he was pagan too.
Wow.
Yeah. And so he thanked me for, saying, you've given me the courage to kind of step out of my shell too. And I was like, okay, that's awesome.
And you've also a lot of people, especially in professional settings, will hide their heathen tattoos and that kind of stuff. And I know you have some tattoos that are pretty up front. If you want to show, you've got
I was going to ask, in what ways do you show that you're pagan?
Yeah. So
what do the tattoos mean? Because I know people are going to ask.
Right. So, and it's not, I know people are going to criticize it too, because I used runes to spell English, but
fuck it.
Yeah. Says hold fast.
Mm-hmm.
That's right.
Hold fast. And that was kind of lots of layered meanings, kind of a tribute to my maternal grandfather was a U.S. Navy World War II veteran. And hold fast to the mast, right, in the storm.
Yeah.
And so then also the other part of the meaning is that I deal with a lot of anxiety and depression. Like coming onto this has been like, hold fast. I can get through this YouTube podcast.
Let's get some fire in the chat for support for Ryan, guys. Because he's a very knowledgeable guy. But yeah, I when we were talking about the idea of doing let's do a history of heathenry in America, the guy that I go to with questions for that is Ryan. So, because he knows going back to the beginning of movements and that kind of stuff, of how things started, who the personalities were. And you've been associated with the Troth before, right?
Yeah, right. Right now I'm kind of hiatus because I've been working on the book and with teaching and stuff. But usually I'm acting in the Stewart of Georgia office. But like I said, I've been kind of a little bit on a hiatus.
Right.
For
those watching and who know us, Ocean and I are in the front. We're in front of the camera a whole lot. Many of you know that Beofold has a channel, and that Bjorn also put out a channel, but there's a fifth one in that circle, and Ryan is definitely our fifth.
Ryan's the guy.
We've been trying to encourage him to make some videos because he knows so much knowledge. He knows so much.
Now, you guys have been laying
just
it on
as knowledgeable as Bjorn.
We're building you up so much so that now you can just let us down now. So anyway, so
I'm gonna need a shot after that one.
But so I guess let's jump right into it then, where we have how the one of the big question I guess to start all this off is going to be how did heathenry start in the modern era? now?
Right.
Like what? Like we have this religion that's going around now. Like why does it even exist in the damn first place?
Well, and where do we start? In the beginning? No.
The dawn of time.
The dawn of time. There was a monolith, and this ape touched the monolith. No. It kind of comes out of the 60s, counterculture movement of the 50s and 60s, and it seems to have spontaneously started in a lot of different places.
Did it pop up in America and Europe at the same time?
Yeah,
or was it brought here?
Right. Well, it kind of coalesced as kind of like the modern pagan movement period, right? So you can go all the way back to Gerald Gardner, who kind of kicks down the door with Wicca, but that kind of opens up the floodgates. He's kind of like the Martin Luther. He kicked down the floodgates, and then now all of a sudden
there's Protestants everywhere. Yeah.
All of a sudden there's pagans all over the place. And so for the U.S., the earliest that we have any evidence for is Elsa Christensen's Odinist Fellowship.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and
you said
she is really problematic,
right?
Right, and so
you mentioned there was something like with years and that kind of stuff, like that, and why you would consider her the first.
Right. So there's all sorts of stories of people having organizations before her, but she's the only one that we have like legit government paperwork. She
did the paperwork.
She did the stuff.
Right.
And so she's the first kind of legitimate one with the Odinist Fellowship that she started in Florida in 1969.
Mm-hmm. And tell us a little bit about who she is, because you mentioned a little bit, and there's a lot to talk about with her. So Christensen is an immigrant from Europe who brings over basically a Nazi ideology, right? And her Odinist Fellowship is straight white supremacy, very influenced by the Nazi occult movement. And, we can go into all sorts of different connections with that, going all the way back into the 17 and 1800s.
Right.
Aristophacy, Theosophy.
Right.
Western esoterica.
Yep.
There's all sorts of kind of threads that kind of come together and weave themselves like weird, right, which we inherited. But she starts at that point, it was a mail newsletter called The Odinist. And I don't really know off the top of my head numbers, but it wasn't very many people that were her followers. And then, of course, we have Stephen Mcnally. And Mcnally, of course, claims to be
the first.
Yeah.
But we don't.
But he wasn't.
Yeah, we don't have any information. There's the Viking Brotherhood that he claims was in the 60s and 70s. And it could have been there, but
wait, you mean Nazis are lying?
Well, right? Apparently, and then the other person is also a Nazi. So then there's whoa. And so you have Mcnally with the Viking Brotherhood, and then that turned into the Asatru Free Assembly, right?
Right. And he starts the Asatru Free Assembly in 1976, and it runs for about 10 years. And this is the time period where Mcnally's really walking that line. Right. He never comes out and straight says that he's white supremacist or anything like that. And he gets really famous with his lawsuit in Washington State, trying to claim the remains of Kennewick Man. Right. And that kind of launched. He
was saying he wanted a DNA test in order to confirm whether or not the Kennewick Man was a white person, basically, according to
European or Native American or whatever. He wanted to claim the remains. Total gimmicky type thing to boost his organization, at least in my opinion.
He sued, didn't he? Through what organization did he bring that? Did he bring it through the Asatru?
I'm pretty sure he brought it through the AFA.
Right. Was it the folk assembly at that point or the free assembly?
No, it was a free assembly.
Okay.
Ooh, you know what? I might have my dates a little bit long. It might be the folk assembly by that point.
I remember seeing a speech with him talking about it, that it was like an ongoing thing in the 80s. So I think it might have been the folk assembly.
Yeah. Well, it would be free assembly. The free assembly stops in 1986. It implodes.
Okay, then maybe the recording I'm thinking of was the 90s. I'm actually not sure. But we can. It's one of those things. Yeah. But there is a transition there between the free assembly and the folk assembly.
Right. And so right about 86 or so, they have an implosion with people who are openly okay with being white supremacists, and they leave. And from that split comes the True Alliance and the Ring of Truth.
Right.
Which gradually comes into just being the Truth. And the True Alliance is run by Michael Murray. And Murray was Elsa Christensen's kind of right-hand man in the Oldness Fellowship. So Murray is straight okay with Nazi ideology, white supremacy, and that thing. And as far as we know, he also claimed to be a part of the American Nazi Party, which is still a thing.
Right.
Which we have a long history of in the United States of harboring those feelings anyway. The German-American Bund in the 1920s and 30s, especially in the 1930s. I mean, they sold out. We're Madison Square Garden.
Yeah.
Right.
You know,
there's pictures of that if you want to Google it. The Madison Square Garden American Nazi Party.
Yeah,
and it's like there's big
giant
monoliths of Washington and all this other stuff. It's wild.
Yeah.
I guarantee you Madison Square Garden regrets the hell. Guarantee it.
Oh, they probably came in with the fumigators all over the place, right? But Murray's straight okay with it. And they start like...
how did he wind up on the... do we have any idea how he wound up in the True Alliance and not in the AFA? Or was he too extreme for the AFA?
Like he was in the True Free Assembly, and then when Mcnally kind of is trying to toe the line between the two sides,
Murray was like, I don't want to toe the line.
Right. He's going off. He starts the True Alliance.
Okay.
And so he's the founder of it, and probably still, haven't really kept tabs on it, probably still running the thing.
And what were the personalities that started the Troth?
With the Troth, you have basically James Chisholm and Stephen Flowers, aka Edward Thorson.
Yep.
Aka
idiot.
Darbin Iden is another one of his pseudonyms.
Little handles, yeah.
Yeah.
So what happened with it? Because the Troth now is an organization.
I was going to bring that up. Yeah.
Yeah. It's like the Troth
now
evolved.
The Troth is decent.
Right.
It's got its issues, but it's definitely not a racist organization
anymore.
Yeah.
Well, and you know, they I don't know, the Flowers, of course, they were kind of the universalists versus the folkists.
Right.
You guys have both done videos over folkism.
Right.
Yep.
On your channels that are excellent, by the way.
Hey, thanks.
Yeah.
I might have been on the phone with Ryan a little bit for some of that.
So the Troth was more of a, and with the Troth too, they went, instead of and this is another thing about these national organizations, they're not really membership type things. They're more umbrella type organizations that kind of have kindreds with underneath them.
So it's like a lot of smaller organizations that kind of popped up all over the place.
And they give those smaller organizations a lot of leeway and a lot of liberty to do whatever they want to at the local level. Right. And that's kind of the idea of the Ring of Truth was at the beginning, was that this is going to be an umbrella organization. We're going to focus on education. We're going to focus on maybe having a path to clergy that kind of develops a little bit later. but they gradually evolved to be more and more accepting, more inclusive.
And this is the troth that we're still talking about, right?
Right, right,
Yeah.
Right.
The truth. So right around, oh shoot, now the dates are escaping me. A 96, I want to say 96, 97 or so. It comes out that Thorson, who really didn't Flowers, whatever you want to call him at this point, had a long history of also being in Satanist organizations.
Okay.
Right.
And not
That's
the
a criticism I see levied at him pretty often.
right, right. And his particular group is the Temple of Set,
Right.
which is an offshoot of Anton LaVey's original Church of Satan.
Mm-hmm.
And the Temple of Set is started by Michael Aguino, I think Aguino is his name. And Flowers is immediately in with them. In fact, he becomes Grand Master of the Order of the Trapezoid for about 4 years, maybe 3 or 4 years. And once that hit, that he's a leader of this Satanist group, then that's kind of what led to his departure from the troth. Okay? And turned it over to...
What was surrounding that departure? Was there like a public blowout about it, or was
there was a lot of public blowback about the fact that he seemed to be kind of creating his own syncretic heathenry with
and using the troth in order to
to propagate those ideas, and you had a lot of blowback with it. And so I think Prudence Priest was the steer of the troth when all that, or maybe right after that, she becomes steer. And there's, then of course Thorson goes off and does his own thing.
Right.
I mean, the thing about him is that because he does have an academic background, his PhD is in runic studies, right? Then that gives a lot of credence to a lot of the things that he writes about.
Yeah.
However, if you read his writings, it is not reconstructed
garbage.
Right.
So I actually, that kind of brings up an interesting point, because like we've talked about, I almost want to go through some of the personalities before this, but there was a point where Reconstruction became more important than a more eclectic approach within heathenry as a trend.
Right.
That as referencing history it's like there was a movement that started going that direction, and it seems to have been more recent, right?
It has been very recent, and it actually starts in Druidry. There's a lot of movement towards Reconstructionist ideas in the Druid ADF.
We can kind of come back to the Reconstruction angle, but I think that I started noticing that, looking at it myself, as this, like in the early part, you do have kind of like this like a Nazi-esque sort of approach to it that's very mystic, and then you have people that are rebelling against that, and then you wind up later on with a more Reconstructionist view kind of moving in, where it's like, let's fuck the Nazi mysticism crap. We're talking more about bringing in history, and you still got white supremacy jumping into that because it seems to inherit, right? Like that lineage still exists, and that's why we have like this sort of like secret Nazi element of heathenry to an extent, where it's like you have like, where it keeps coming out sometimes that somebody winds up having, whoa, you're actually a fucking racist kind of shit. So, I guess I could take it back just a little bit. You brought up Stephen Mcnally briefly. What happened with him? Like, I covered him in the Folkism video for anybody watching.
Right.
But there's more to him, right? Like he breaks off from the Free Assembly and then there's the AFA, and he's still walking that line, right? He's doing speeches, he's talking about racial dreams and all that kind of stuff, right? So
right. So between 86 and 95, he's still kind of walking that line, but not really having a group. And it's in 95 that he starts the Asa True Folk Assembly. So still got the AFA.
He keeps the acronym.
Yeah.
Why did that happen? Like because the Free Assembly, I guess the Free Assembly breaks apart, and he wanted
something new.
That was where the Troth and Asatru Alliance came from, and then he's like, no, I want to keep the acronym. Basically, okay.
Yeah, and between 95 and up until very recently, he's tried to walk that line.
Mm-hmm.
And he was the leader of the Asa True Folk Assembly from that point up until just a couple of years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And the current political movements is really kind of what brought him out.
Right.
The alt-right really kind of pushed, because he started endorsing it. He started going on Facebook and saying all these things, and he's no longer walking that line.
Right. When did that start? That was years ago, right?
Yeah, 20, I would say right around 2013, 2014.
Mm-hmm.
I was going to say somewhere between 12 and 15. So that would be right around there is when I started seeing it myself.
Yeah. Because I remember, I remember that kind of being a thing too. It's like, oh wait, no, Stephen Mcnally's not hiding it anymore. Right. Like
he's saying the quiet part really fucking loud.
Right.
And all of the people that are writing about heathenry in America up until that point basically portrayed Mcnally as this okay guy who's doing this kind of middle of the road type thing. He's trying to bring all of heathenry together and that sort of thing. If you look at Kaplan's book, what was the name of it? Radical Religion in America.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
He talks about Mcnally in there as kind of this. He talks about Murray and Christensen as being, of course, the far right, and he talks. This is published in 97, by the way, 96 or 97.
Mm-hmm.
And he talks about the Troth being inclusive, so he's giving right and left, and then he tries to portray kind of Mcnally as kind of this middle of the road figure,
right?
Which we all know he's not. But at the time, he was very carefully walking that line with his public statements about whether or not, he was white supremacist or not.
Being very wishy-washy with, like, avoiding answers to questions, being wishy-washy with whether or not, like, where he stood on stuff like that.
Right.
Yeah.
And this is about the time, too, that he's starting to write his own stuff, his metagenetics.
Mm-hmm.
And, right. That's also about the time, too, you start first hints of DNA, all that stuff, and people are starting to get into DNA tests and finding out their backgrounds and all that. So he's playing up the kind of ethnicity type thing in the late 90s, early 2000s.
Mm-hmm.
Metagenetics is straight.
Yeah, I guess I went into
supremacy.
metagenetics in the Folkism video, but definitely explain it a little bit from your end, like, because he released that back when genetics was like this mystical thing, right? Like people didn't know very much about it. So, but he was trying to say it was scientific at the time, right?
Right. And he was tying religion to it.
Mm-hmm.
He's basically his premise was that basically the religion is in the DNA.
Right.
Right. And
which makes no fucking sense.
All right.
It's an anti-scientific position, basically. He's trying to say essentially that, like, he talks a lot about, I think he's inspired a lot by Carl Jung's race soul thing, isn't he? That
yes, oh God, Jung.
Or he's talking like I think Jung wrote an essay called Wotan at one point, where he talked about the spirit of the German people essentially being, and that Odin was that archetypal soul of all that kind of stuff. And that's the kind of thing that Mcnally went to. Such that when I was looking it up, I wasn't sure if Mcnally was a polytheist. I thought he might have been like an archetypal pagan, but no, he's a polytheist. I think a lot of the characters that you're talking about would have been strict polytheists, right? Or some of them not. Like actually, that's
So there's it's kind of debatable in some of them. Some of their statements, especially like Murray, who at one point was asked about Asatru and just said faith in God. And then the interviewer was like, "What? Didn't you mean like to put an S on the end of that?" And then he restates it as saying, "Oh yeah, well of course the gods and goddesses." Right. So it was kind of almost as if he
could have been a slip of the time period, but also could have been. Yeah, I could see it.
Could have been this idea of substitution. Odin.
It's like how heathens will still go Jesus.
But I mean, there is that strain though too of people who claim to be heathens but are Odinists and see basically Odin as this
as like a monolatrous deity.
They hold Odin and they only hail Odin. They hold him above everything else, and you don't ever really hear him talk about anything else except Odin.
It's like almost like Christ's substitution.
Absolutely,
with Odin. Yeah,
there's almost no difference.
Yeah. And I mean, it's part of that shedding of the Christian worldview that we've all grown up in. That's that it's kind of hardwired into us, right?
Imagine breaking out of Christianity, finding this rich fucking culture and religion, and just picking one deity and then being racist about it. Imagine doing all of that work and still being an idiot.
Yeah. They
couldn't be me.
For some reason, they just hold on to it. It's comforting, I guess. I don't know. I haven't really got into the psychology parts of it.
But so we have like Mcnally, he starts walking this line. Christensen, what wound up happening with her movement?
I don't know. I mean, for one of the things too, I want to point out is that both Christensen, Murray, and Mcnally all pushed prison ministries.
Yeah.
And that's something, for instance, when the Troth actually have tried to make headway in that. And there's a lot of stuff that comes in, a lot of systemic problems that come in with this, right? Because our prison system is set up to basically be racist.
Yep.
And if you go into prisons, they are divided by
race. Yep.
Prison gangs are strictly ethnic.
Yep.
Right. And so that's where they found a very fertile place to push their.
Yeah. They didn't have to try very hard, unfortunately. Right. It was very low effort, very high reward for them, unfortunately.
Right.
And Jail just became a member. Thanks, Jail.
But yeah, that's one of the angles that a lot of people don't bring up is that growth of people coming out of prison and then immediately being a part of the Odinist Fellowship or being a part of the AFA. And of course, Mcnally, of course, plays up that Asatru ideal, the Victorian Viking raider.
Right.
But of
with the aesthetic and everything else.
Yeah, with the aesthetic and all that stuff. I don't know if they had horns on their helmets, but that's probably another episode for
you. Jack and Quill brings up a point about, to be fair, Odin and Jesus do kind of have the sacrificing selves to themselves thing in common. I think that actually winds up being part of the reason why we have an Odin to Jesus translation when we have like a monolatrist transfer. Almost, where you have somebody.
The big difference is that Odin actually got something out of
it. He did get an alphabet.
Shots fired. Okay, so
local man hangs himself, learns how to read.
Oh my God! All right, so I'm trying to figure out kind of where to go from here now. Like my brain is just like, all right, I'm trying to go to like, all right, we're going to go somewhere else with this interview. Oh, wait, now my mind is totally distracted by that.
Now you're just thinking in memes.
Exactly.
Right,
They're
right.
all like, there's like a little ship floating by. This is
your brain 5 years on memes.
internet brain is a thing, y'all.
It's the worst.
So
It definitely is.
but anywho, so we got all these different movements that pop up, and the Troth is becoming more and more inclusive. Then the AFA winds up having Stephen Mcnally retire, right?
Right.
And like this was a catalyst of a lot of the movements with modern heathenry, right? That
Yeah.
a lot of conversations started to be had that weren't had before, because before that, like I guess we should mention Diana Paxton as well.
Right. And Paxton is kind of in this from the beginning, right? Too. You know, Diana goes all the way back into Isaac Bonewitz and the '60s and the San Francisco pagan community,
Right.
there, and comes all the way to the present.
Right.
Yeah, and
She's like
I
this
haven't-
strong through line straight from the beginning.
right.
And where did she stand on a lot of this stuff? Is you said you haven't seen what?
I haven't seen anything really outright racist from her ever.
I've met her before, and she's pretty strong against folkism. But the way that she described it to me was that it was something that before Declaration 127, which I would definitely want to get into next. Before Declaration 127, nobody talked about it. Like it was a thing that was there, and you would have folkists and universalists or whatever at the same events, and they would sit down with each other and hang out because they're all heathens. You know, they used grith to justify it, I believe, right?
Right.
Yeah, grith and grith to justify it, and it was it was the 800-pound gorilla in the room. Nobody really wanted to broach it because they knew it would probably lead to
Splitting everybody up.
splitting everybody
yeah.
up again.
Again, I didn't even think about that. It's like, yeah, we've already had this split.
Yeah, they've already had a giant split. They brought up multiple
and people are trying to
groups.
come back together and all that kind of stuff, but they're just not having the conversation at that point.
And they're
Right.
probably afraid not just of the split, but it was a split over racism. So, like,
Yeah.
you don't want to spark that again.
Right. And well, you've also got that angle too, where they're trying, and I've heard this before, they're trying to bring people out of that.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Oh yeah. It's like, we need to have the conversation because, they're going to stay that way unless they're exposed to, the other personality, or they have the conversation, all that stuff. But if you're avoiding the conversation the entire time as well, then that conversation really never comes up, which is why it's like heathenry wound up kind of being stagnant in this place where it was the conversations not being had. It seems from the 90s to the early 2010s.
Yep.
yeah,
right.
at least. Yeah. And McNally's retiring really kind of blew it open again because Flavel takes over, and then
He left a power vacuum.
Yeah, well, and the new leader of the AFA just comes right out and says a statement incredibly similar to the 14 words.
Right.
He takes a harder stance than McNally himself.
Right.
Right. Yeah.
And
well,
McDonald
he-
still hangs out with the AFA as well. So it's
Yeah.
not
Oh, yeah.
like he approves, right? And we got a super chat from Jail, says, Wolf, thank you for making an otherwise rough day great. Local man hangs himself, learns how to read. That needs a server lore because it's so perfect. Okay. This is going to be a thing now, isn't it?
Got it.
Yeah.
So McNally retires, and we have Flavel who comes in, and he makes these statements that are like, actually, you know what? We can probably pull them up. I wasn't prepared to pull them up, but I can find them. If you want to talk about them, I can find them for you.
But yeah, I mean, his statement was really like, we need to save the world for our white children.
Right. Like
That's
it
what
was,
it says on the website.
straight up 14 words.
Yeah. And then he starts, the thing about it too is that they're putting out these memes like crazy. Mcnally really got into memes right around the time period where you got Pepe the Frog and all the stuff coming out from 4chan and the alt-right. Mcnally really started hitting that.
Here's the statement that he made today.
Okay.
Today we're bombarded by confusion and messages contrary to our ancestors and our folk. The AFA would like to make it clear that we believe that gender is not a social construct. It is a beautiful gift from the holy powers of our ancestors. The AFA celebrates our feminine ladies, our masculine gentlemen, and above all, our beautiful white children. The children of the folk are a shining future and legacy of all those men and women, the people back at the beginning. Hail AFA families now and always. And that was from Matt Flavel.
I've got another one here. It's from their website that
I've got another one as well here. This was one. The Asatru Folk Assembly would like to wish a very happy Mother's Day to all our mothers. With every Aryan child you bring into existence, you bring light into the world. Thank you for all that you do. And then I've got another screenshot of a questionnaire that comes up.
You should look at their principles. Like principle number 2, the preservation of the ethnic European folk and their continued evolution. If the ethnic European folk cease to exist, Asatru would likewise no longer exist. Let us be clear, by ethnic European folk, we mean white people.
Right.
Yeah.
And then a little bit further down, the survival and welfare of the ethnic European folk as a cultural, biological group is a religious imperative for the AFA.
And then here I have on the screen he is just Volkswagen. What in the world? I can't. All right. Am I misunderstanding the message here? Or does this mean if somebody wasn't white or if they were queer, they wouldn't be welcome in the AFA? And the AFA
100%
says,
that is correct.
Responds, you are not misunderstanding. The AFA is not in the practice of policing what people do in their bedrooms, but we are an organization clear in supporting the traditional family, and yes, the Asatru would be the ethnic religion of the European people. So it became this thing where Mcnally before that wasn't saying statements that were as clear as that, you know, like, but when he retired, everything just kind of came up.
Flavel just took the cloak right off everything.
Right.
I want to read this other principle real quick before we move away from this, before the conversation evolves. This is number 4, the family principle. Healthy families are the cornerstone of the folk society. Its strength, prosperity is derived from them. Sounds good, right? That's a good first sentence.
Yeah.
We in Asatru support strong, healthy, white family relationships. We want our children to grow up to be mothers and fathers to white children of their own. We believe that those activities and behaviors supportive of the white family should be encouraged, while those activities and behaviors destructive of the white family are to be discouraged.
They're probably against interracial marriage.
Yep.
I think they're against adoption by this as well.
Oh,
white
geez,
children
right.
of their own. Can't even adopt anybody.
That's okay.
Isn't that big?
Yeah, that is big. Okay, well, there's that. So that happens, right? And let me see, is that...
Do you see how anybody who would be soft against the AFA is yikesy? Like, chat, are you guys seeing that?
Yeah.
Chat, what is your thoughts on all this stuff? Like, if somebody...
Anybody that doesn't publicly denounce these guys, I mean, that's tacit approval, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Silence is compliance.
Yeah.
So let me see if there's a... I don't have the date. When did all that happen? Do you know, Ryan?
Ooh, actually not too long ago.
Yeah, it was very recent.
Yeah. Because this is when Declaration 127 started to coalesce, right?
Yeah. That statement actually is what got Huygens, Heathenhoff, and Zan Fulmer, who ran it, to write Declaration 127.
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
say that again. Who?
Zan Fulmer. He's the guy behind Huygens, Heathenhoff.
Mm-hmm.
He's no longer running that now. I think he's actually working on a PhD or something like that. I don't remember. I haven't really spoken to him in a while. but yeah, the wording of that, of course, comes from Havamal 127. Is when you see evil, you speak out against it.
Right.
Right. And so that statement is directly aimed at the AFA.
Right.
And only mentions the AFA.
But it doesn't talk about like the greater, like the declaration itself is just talking about the organization. It's not talking about the greater issue within heathenry.
Right.
That when we look at that history, we see the AFA wasn't the only one that was like this. And in fact, they were considered middle of the road for so long. Right.
Right.
But the declaration is against that.
Yeah, it's against the AFA specifically. Right. Specifically names the AFA. But now it's come to include all.
Yeah, it can include any harmful group that statement could apply to, but it was created for the AFA.
And the wording of the Declaration 127 is still just the AFA, right? Like, it seems that it's still. Hold on, let me.
I know that there was a push, maybe a year or so ago, to try to reword it to include the.
It needs to be reworded to be stronger, honestly, in my opinion. Yeah. It is the bare minimum statement that you should be making as a human being. Right. I mean this in a not so polite way, but it's very weak wording, and anybody who reads it should be able to go, well, yeah, duh.
Right.
So, okay, I'll just read it out for you guys real quick. It says, the organizations listed below represent a truly diverse set of voices within modern heathenry. They represent national organizations, research centers, so on, such as, basically just talks about, to state their complete denunciation of and disassociation from the Also True Folk Assembly. It still has just the group. The Also True Folk Assembly, herein referred to as the AFA, has a long and well-documented history of discrimination on the basis of ethnicity, sexuality, and gender identity. In a recent statement, the AFA declared point blank that non-white and LGBT heathens are not welcome in their tradition. While the undersigned organizations listed here fully recognize the AFA's right to govern themselves as they see fit with full autonomy, we hereby exercise the same right. The AFA's views do not represent our communities. We hereby declare that we do not condone hatred or discrimination carried out in the name of our religion and will no longer associate with those who do. We will not grant the tacit approval of silence in the name of frith to those who would use our traditions to justify peace on the basis of race, nationality, orientation, or gender identity. The AFA is free to stand for whatever principles it sees fit, and they are free to stand alone. Which again, strongly, it has elements of strong wording in it, but when it comes right down to it as a declaration, it is minimum.
Our good friend Bob of the Old Ways says, yeah, Dec 127 is pretty centrist milquetoast stuff, and I would agree.
It's not like it's a differentiation from statement, basically saying their views don't represent us, and we won't associate with people who have those views.
Right.
It's, as far as it comes down to strong condemnations, it's just like they're over there kind of statement. Right. So, like that statement came out, right? And then we had heathens come out in droves to sign it, right, Ryan? I guess go ahead from there.
There was, thousands of individuals obviously signed it, and then dozens and dozens of groups. Signed it and published it. And still, on their web pages, we're a proud signee of Declaration 127.
Right.
And so I think after that is where this kind of exploded, where we don't need to be as the one comment, milk toast. We need something.
We need something a little stronger, right?
Right, to denounce these people that push these very white supremacist ideologies.
It wound up never manifesting, though. Am I right? Like there isn't as it stands, like a stronger declaration, so to speak.
Not that I'm aware of.
Right.
I want to bring up our good friend Beofold.
Yeah, Beofold has one.
He has the Declaration of Deeds that he wrote. And honestly, I'm willing to make a push to make that.
I am too.
to make that more public. He's kept it to himself, and I think he's published it on his own blog. But I would like to make a push.
Oh, did he publish it on the blog?
I think
we'll talk to Beerfeld about that and see if we can get something.
Need to get him on here.
I think that it's
get him on here and talk about that, because I think that would be a great way to really let racists know they're not fucking welcome.
Right.
Exactly.
But Declaration 127, to my knowledge, for a long time was the bellwether. It was the smell test.
Yeah.
Where, if you go into a new group, you can say, do you guys support Declaration 127? If they said no, it was like, bye.
Peace. But like you said, it's kind of the bare minimum. We need something stronger now. But it became kind of like what every inclusive group put up on their webpage. Proud signee of Declaration 127.
Right.
And then of course it spread all over Facebook and Twitter and Insta and all the other social media platforms too.
It's hard to sign now, isn't it? Like you can leave like a comment or something like that.
They're not accepting
organizations
signatures.
can't. Yeah. So people that are in the chat that are like, let me sign it, and it's like, well, we can't.
They're talking about Beerfeld's thing. They want to take.
For Beerfeld's thing, yes, and that's something that we'll talk about. Right.
Yeah. We're gonna get Beerfeld on here pretty soon, and we're gonna have a big conversation about it. We'll make it a really big deal. So bear with us, chat. We'll get there. Promise.
Absolutely. But go ahead, Ryan.
I was going to go back to Thorson too, because
please do.
Please do.
He plays, because he comes around about the same time as the alt-right and 4chan stuff happens with Mcnally and him being more vocal about his white supremacy. Thorson does too. In fact, that's when he makes a couple of Facebook posts.
This is Edred Thorson, right?
Yeah, Edred Thorson, aka Stephen Flowers, aka Darbin Idin, which I think is his. I don't remember which pseudonym he writes. He writes some stuff for Zoroastrianism under that name, I think. But he comes right out to side with Mcnally.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and the alt-right. And most people don't know, like, okay, so he starts the Ring of Troth once the Asatru Free Assembly is gone. And then, of course, as we already talked about, the fact that the Troth basically kicks him out because of his involvement with the Temple of Set and the Order of the Trapezoid. Which, by the way, just for connections, the Order, the Temple of Set's founder started the Order of the Trapezoid in Velvisburg Castle.
What is the significance of that?
And if you guys know it's Wevelsburg, which in German is Wewelsburg, right? Because W's or V's. But that's where Himmler had the SS.
Right.
And so the guy
it's with the black sun on the floor and all that kind of stuff, right?
And that I run into that all the time too. No, the black sun is not an ancient symbol. Right? That specific thing.
So I guess we could briefly talk about that, right? Because I think that you're a good person to talk about that with. That the black sun, what is commonly referred to as the black sun, is an exclusively Nazi symbol created by the Nazis. It was put
the other
on
word
the floor.
For the black sun. Go ahead and say it.
The other,
what?
The sun in red?
Yeah, sun in red.
Yeah.
So there were sun wheels. There is archaeological evidence for that, but that specific symbol is straight Heinrich Himmler.
Mm-hmm.
That symbol doesn't exist before Himmler delves into Ariosophy and Guido von List and all of that. So I just thought the connection there here.
Right.
Thorson is the Grand Master of the Order of the Trapezoid, and the Order of the Trapezoid is started in Himmler's castle. It's kind of a strong connection.
Yeah, that's would be a warning sign, I would think.
Yeah,
you know,
like if I'm going to start an organization, I'm probably not going to pick where the SS started.
Right. Especially when there's other locations available on the planet.
Right.
You know, you would think, you know, I mean, if there's nothing else, but still, even let's just wait for something else to come up, shall we?
Right.
But there's nothing else on the planet is available. All we've got is this castle. That's the reason why we did it, right? Like that's the excuse where he's running with, sure.
Yeah, sure.
But no. So starting there, of course.
Yeah. So so he breaks away from the Troth, and he really focuses on the Rune Guild at that point. And the Rune Guild is kind of his thing, his baby, if you will. And that was something that I, as a baby heathen, joined without really any knowledge of its background or what it was about. And I didn't really stay in. I wasn't really active in it, and I kind of got out of it when I researched Thorson a bit. I was like, I probably don't want to be sending my money to this group.
Nope.
But he basically has the Rune Guild kind of set up like his Temple of Set Heathenry. Right. And I'll probably get people that are in the Rune Guild to probably give me hell for that, but that's what it is. They have master and student relationships, and it's set up very similar to a lot of Western esoteric orders.
Okay.
Like Order of the Golden Dawn, where we have these degrees, all basically based on Freemasonry idea.
Right.
So
you have that structure, and they just kind of import it, and it's
right.
It works, so let's use that kind of shit.
Yeah, that master apprentice type thing. Really Sith.
Oh my god. Also Jedi though.
Yeah. Well, yeah. True. But there can be only.
Is there this grand Nazi council?
Probably somewhere secret. Maybe
something. The Jedi are the bad guys.
Right. But Thorson also has Runa Raven Press, and the significance of that is this is how the AFA, the Ostertrue Folk Assembly, brings in a lot of money.
Oh, okay.
In 2013, Thorson turned over the rights to many of his books to the AFA.
Okay.
And so every time you buy a Thorson book, that money goes right into the AFA coffers.
Definitely good to know.
Right.
So chat note.
Yeah, like, if you can,
I want to get a hold of all the
book.
Right. I want to get a hold of all the books, and then you wind up.
It's okay to steal from Nazis.
Right.
Period.
If you want their book, I like. Yeah.
And I would really push Paxton's book, Taking Up the Runes. Is that the name of it?
Yes, I have a copy of it.
Yeah, I do too, somewhere in this shelf somewhere. But she summarizes a lot of what Thorson does, and the thing about it is you have to be really skeptical when you read these things, right? Especially Thorson books. You have to be critical in your reading, and reading critically is a completely different skill set than just casual reading.
Yeah, I agree.
And because that's really kind of how I come at my book on heathenry, is from a teacher's standpoint, and not from really kind of an expert on the lore type way. Like you have to have these specific.
You're looking at the movements.
Right. Yeah. Well, and you have to have these historical thinking skills in order to really kind of they call us the religion with
homework. Yeah.
Right. And you really need to develop these critical reading and critical analysis of primary source documents and other documents in order to glean information and leave the maybe Satanist tinge or the theosophical tinge or ariosophical tinge, whatever the particular bias that author has, leave that out of it. But Paxton does a pretty good job of summarizing Thorson's in her room book.
Mm-hmm.
Right. She goes back through and says, well, Thorson says this, but I say this, which is a really good way to go about it. But yeah, I always want to bring up the fact that buying his books puts money right into the AFA's coffers. A lot of people are like, with their recent purchase of the church in Minnesota,
right,
where
So for those keeping score, the AFA has recently purchased a church in Minnesota. There was a whole to-do about whether or not they could legally purchase that church, and the city council wound up siding with the AFA.
Right.
And there was a lot of blowback for that, but
they were legally hand-tied. Like, I don't.
But yeah, but I was going to say
them.
that it's one of those things where it's part of our constitutional rights, right?
Yeah,
right.
They could have sued the city so hard that they probably could have bought the city.
Right.
Like, it would have been really bad if the city had tried to stop them. Morally, I've heard whispers that morally a lot of them wanted to, but constitutionally they didn't have a choice. Legally,
it would have gone to the
under the
Supreme
way
Court
we're
and they
set
would have
up.
won.
They would have won.
Right.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So
definitely.
And then that would have had Supreme Court precedent that the AFA can just do what they want,
right?
And we don't actually.
No, we don't.
So,
but that's where they got the money from.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of people are like, where are they getting all this money to put up these hofs and buy a church
people, right?
and convert? Yeah, well, the money from Thorson's books too.
Oh yeah.
I mean,
yeah.
You type in runes on Amazon.
It's the first book.
Yeah.
It's the default book that everybody goes to first.
Right.
Whereas go for Paxton, go for Paxton, go for Stephen Pollington as well.
Oh, definitely Pollington.
Pollington has a great book on runes that I would suggest as well. It's one that I've these two actually. There's two good books from Pollington about runes. Yeah, it's Paxton and Pollington. I think it's great starting places for anybody that's jumping in. You're going to have more than enough material to start looking, and then you can look into their bibliographies after that to kind of jump deeper if you want to. But those are good starting places.
Definitely agree with that. But
that being said, if we want to get like tie back into it, so like it's like the kind of the picture that we're painting is like we've got these movements that are popping up, and Paxton is like this through line who's been like softly against this shit the entire time. And she's associated with the Troth now, correct?
Right. And she's kind of, I don't really think that she was a member of the AFA. I think she was in it from the Ring of the Troth when the Ring of the Troth started and was designated as a universalist organization, because the old designations, instead of inclusive and exclusive, were universalist and focused.
Mm-hmm.
And so she's been a part of the universalist group as long as I've been able to find.
Right.
And still currently is working towards those ends with Heathenry.
As I've seen. She staunchly defends Declaration 127. Her position is that it's a very strong declaration, and she points to steelman her. She points to the end of it as saying that it's a stronger document than a lot of people talk about, where she says, the AFA's views do not represent our communities. We hereby declare that we do not condone hatred or discrimination carried out in the name of our religion. This is broader, right? And will no longer associate with those who do, and we do not will not grant tacit approval of silence in the name of Frith to those who would use our traditions to justify prejudice on the basis of race, nationality, orientation, gender identity. But then it goes back to the AFA. But for her point, she focuses on that paragraph and says, that's what we're fighting for.
Right.
Which mad respect to her for saying that.
Yeah, absolutely. Our good friend Friendly Chess Piece says, the fact that the book is funding the AFA kind of ruins it for me.
Oh no, Chess. Chat. All right, Chess is our resident pun machine, by the way, y'all.
That's a really good one.
Cassandra Belmont says, it blew my mind when I realized the Bluetooth technology symbol is a rune. It's a bind rune for Harold Bluetooth, because King Harold Bluetooth was famous for uniting kingdoms. That was like his legacy. And
you bring devices together.
He wanted to unite all of those people. And then he also was known for eating blueberries. It would stain his mouth blue, stain his teeth blue, and so he was known as Harold Bluetooth. So when they were trying to develop the technology for uniting devices, they took his his bind rune and the name Bluetooth to
Because it's a
give mad
Norwegian
respect.
company.
It is a Norwegian company, and they were giving shout outs to their roots.
Yeah.
It was a great shout out.
So I think we can bring it into kind of like a wrapping up phase and talking about Declaration 127, the effects of it, what's going on now, and
where
like,
where
are we at,
heathenry
and
in
where should we
America
go?
is. Yeah, where are we at now, and where's the direction for heathenry in America?
Well, I mean, for me, it's, the last 5 years have really brought a lot of weird to the surface. I always look at it, I'm a history teacher. My ideas on history before I even knew about heathenry were a woven tapestry.
Right.
I want to clarify, weird is WYRD,
Right.
not, hey, that's weird.
It's brought out a lot of strangeness too, though.
It has.
Right.
But
Weird
it has
can
brought
be
out a
very
lot of
weird.
weird, in which, so for those asking, then it's the weird is the woven tapestry of time, as presented by the Norns in their weaving of time in the universe as we move through it, and when you look at history, you're seeing this weaving of paths and humans interacting with each other, and that's one way to really represent it. So
that's how I taught history. Yeah, that's how I explained history to my classes, even in before I chose the heathen path and before I really even knew what weird and Orlog were. I used the tapestry analogy. We're going to look at the tapestry of history. We're going to take out some threads. We're going to look at them. We're going to see where they're going, and we're going to put them back into the context of the tapestry itself. And what we're seeing is that foundation, that weird that we inherited with Christensen and Mcnally, is coming to the surface. And I think it's indicative of America in general. Our foundations aren't really the best. Right. Going all the way back to the beginning of the European colonization.
You can go back to the discussion of between Jefferson and the other founding fathers about the line in the Declaration of Independence about slavery, right?
Right.
They wound up setting down, those threads started, and those threads continued weaving, and now we're feeling the effects of them. We've inherited those threads.
Right. And so what I think is, with Declaration, with the current political situation, has really brought it up to the forefront. And we kind of mirror that in the heathen community, obviously, because we're part of this culture. And we're kind of at a turning point. I think that we're hopefully, a lot of my history friends and professors and stuff are very optimistic about the fact that they think that this might be the last gasp of social Darwinistic ideology. And that
what do you think about that?
Turning the corner. I think so too, but in different areas of the country, you also see it being taught.
Right.
And this latest movement, I'll make no bones about my political affiliation. I'm definitely against Trump and Trumperism in general, but that has it's brought it out.
Right. I think for me, and let me know what you think on this, that I think that the recent trend of having the conversations about these issues more directly has been helpful for heathenry.
Right.
That rather than ignoring it.
Ignoring it has just made the problem so much worse.
Right. It just allows it to fester. It's like if you see a cut, like there's a wound on your body, and you just pretend that it's not there, it's going to get infected and fester, rather than paying attention to it, taking care of it, putting in the effort to make it heal. If we ignore that racism element, it's going to fester and get worse.
Yep, it's just going to grow again.
Right.
And the Band-Aid analogy is a great one. You just I
thought of that in the moment.
Yeah. It's it's like racism in America, right? We had Civil War and Reconstruction. We had this fantastic chance during Reconstruction to turn a page, and we didn't do it. And then we just kind of ignored racism. We were, oh, well, slavery's over.
Let's talk about that element of it, because I think Reconstruction has been a really good way of having that conversation, right? Because if you're a Reconstructionist, it's
I was referring to the era after the Civil War.
Oh, no, never mind. Okay, yeah.
I was going all U.S. history on you.
Okay. The sentences that you said apply in both cases, so I'm just you know. But yeah, I think that with Reconstructionism and heathenry, you do wind up having a really good way of talking about this issue, because you know the attitudes that we're seeing pop up, like the Vikings weren't inspired by the Nazis, right?
Right.
Like they didn't have these ideas about race, and they didn't have these ideas about exclusivity and or being against race mixing or whatever the fuck, right? You didn't have those attitudes there. Not to say that the Vikings didn't have problematic elements, right? But you can still be like, if you're going to say you're a Reconstructionist and then you start trying to import this race element into it, you're fucking up your Reconstructionism.
Right. I think there's a big misconception about Reconstructionist heathenry. And me and Joseph have done a lot of stuff on that too with PowerPoint, or we actually did a whole thing at Mystic
you guys
South
did a whole
podcast
that together, basically.
I think that video is still on his channel.
It is. It's his first video that he ever uploaded, and it was like a year and a half ago or something.
Yeah, we spent quite a bit putting that together to go through it. But there is this idea that we're Reconstructionists are hardcore, that we're very dogmatic.
Mm-hmm. And at times, like that could be like one of the first things that I bumped into in heathenry is that there's a trend of Reconstructionists that want to withhold sources and use the knowledge that they have as being like, no, I'm better than you because I know this stuff, but I'm not going to tell you where I learned any of this stuff. Right. And that annoyed the hell out of me as a baby heathen because I couldn't grow for a while because, you know, people would just tell me things and then they wouldn't tell me where to go to find resources. Later that's changed. I think it's probably in some places it's still like that, but I think in a lot of places it's evolving there, where people are being more open about, hey, you know, find this book and all that kind of stuff, being more friendly about it. But back to your point about whether or not Reconstructionists are just mainly dogmatic, there's a misconception there. So go for it.
Yeah, I think there's that misconception that people that use Reconstructionist methods to inform their praxis are very dogmatic or almost bordering on fanatical, but we're not, and we're also not trying to recreate the 9th century.
Right.
We know that there are elements of the 9th century that don't work in the modern world.
Right. I like cars, for example. I love being able to drive. And I don't need to ride a horse to work or, you know, whatever. Right. But
my horse is made of iron. It roars like a dragon.
Wolf is talking about a motorcycle, guys. So
people like, what?
What's he doing? Is he serious?
Really got one of those?
But like you do get some of this attitude sometimes where it's like, yeah, we're trying to recreate the 9th century, which that's not what the point of Reconstructionism is. I don't think. The point. No. So go for it. I'm sorry.
Right. So we don't have the unbroken chain of practices or religion like Hinduism, a polytheist faith that has a continual tradition all the way through it. Ours was unfortunately broken, and it was broken before that culture developed a written language. Really, you know, all of the
we have the runes, but they didn't create a whole lot of records in the same way that, say, the Romans did. Right.
Yeah. And so we look at it through, basically we look at it through different eyes. You either look at it through a Roman or Greek eyes, like Tacitus. You know, he's writing through a Roman perspective
about Germania.
Yeah.
Right.
And he has his own set of biases and his own agenda. with that too. So you have to take that into account. And then everything else we have is written by Christians.
Right. Everything else. Yeah.
Everything else.
There's a couple of people I've bumped into recently that have been surprised by that, where it's like, it's like they think that the Poetic Edda is written by pagans, and it's not.
No.
It's written by Christians.
Right. And since we don't have that unbroken chain, we have to be able to go back and try to mine practices out. Like, what does a boat look like? What do we do? How is it structured? Those sorts of things. And a lot of that we don't have answers for.
So I guess now would be a really good time, actually, since to talk about a little bit about how Reconstructionism started out and then carried in, because you were talking about the ADF a second ago.
As far as I know, it's really kind of started with the Druid groups, and it started with people being interested in history, accurate history, and trying to look at it from an academic perspective. And that goes into a lot of what I try to do with papers too, because I think there's a vast void between academia and the people that just want to practice. Right. Because not everyone has the time to go back and get a PhD in Norse studies.
Right. You have some people that are like very outspoken PhDs, such as Jackson Crawford and Carl Siegfried, right?
Right. And Matthias Nordvig, too, which Crawford's not pagan, and he really tries to distance himself from
I think he does a good job.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's very clear that he's not a practitioner.
Right. Right.
He doesn't try to hide it.
No, at all. Dr. Carl Siegfried is heathen, and so is Dr. Nordvig. So they are looking. I mean, you can look at it through. Crawford's got a fantastic, YouTube series with chock full of information, but you have to remember he's not looking at it from a pagan perspective.
Right.
He's looking at it from an academic perspective.
Right.
But I think there's this whole,
which can be good. Like, if you're looking for
objectivity,
right, then Crawford's going to be a great source for you. It's just that, if you're looking for a practice approach, then that's not this. You can use it to inform your practice, right? Right. Because you're getting the academic information. That's great. You can do what you want with it. But
always double check Crawford's work, because little asterisk caveat is that he has messed some stuff up because he doesn't understand the culture. He's just studying the linguistics side of it, and he has to study hard to get the linguistics correct. But I wouldn't consider him a great source. However, I do recommend his videos because they are and they do have information that is good. Right. Just always cross-reference.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And as a Reconstructionist, we have to bring all of that kind of together, because even most of the people that have written about Norse religion look at it from a linguistic standpoint.
Yeah. I noticed that with like the Wodening brothers in their book. They with all the criticisms that you have of it, their method was like extremely linguistic.
Oh, straight.
Yeah.
Going and that doesn't really inform our practice, right? And language can be weird. But you also have to bring in, and now you're just now starting to see other people or other academics bring in archaeology. So that also has to inform us too. So if the linguistics and the archaeology line up and the history lines up, well, then that's solid.
Right. It may or may not be true.
Right.
But it's about as close as you can get.
Right. But if you only have something that's only backed by linguistics, there's no archaeological evidence for any of this, then
it's a big question mark.
Yeah, it's a big, huge question mark.
You can certainly say it's a possibility, but you can't say, because I have seen over and over again, the linguistics here match up. Therefore, this is the case.
Right.
Like I've seen that so many times, and it's just not how it works. Right.
Yeah, that's like red flags like crazy.
Yeah. Language is very weird. WID. But yeah. So I think we're sitting at an hour 23. Do we want to have any kind of like finishing thoughts or anything along those lines before we kind of wrap up?
Well, I would, for anyone who's interested in that topic of heathenry in America, there's a couple of books. There's been many books written about it, but there's a couple of books that I would definitely recommend. One, there's Jennifer Snook, American Heathens, The Politics of Identity in a Pagan Religious Movement.
Mm-hmm.
And the one that I really, really, really like for this topic is Stephanie Schnerbeen. I want to say that's how I pronounce that. Schnerbeen. Norse Revival, Transformations of Germanic Neo-Paganism. And that was published in 2016. And for me, that's kind of the book about this whole heathenry movement, modern history of it.
Right.
And she herself is pagan too. So she's looking at it from writing about it from an inside perspective, which we don't usually have a lot of times with these histories.
Real quick, Jack and Quill has sent me a DM.
Uh-oh.
And you know what that means, guys.
That means fan art. I can't wait to see this. I'm going to see it live with you guys.
Yep. I don't know if you can, I'm going to send this to the group chat that we have.
Here comes.
As well.
That's it.
So you can see it, Ryan.
Okay.
That's it.
I think it's pretty fucking great.
Jack, dude, you are awesome.
Just straight up. All right. I'm gonna where is the chat? Where did it go? There it goes. Okay, cool. Now I've got it back open. All right. So you said like there's some suggested reading for researching more into it. Any other parting thoughts or anything that you want to jump into?
No, I plugged my book a little bit.
Yeah, you're working on a book, going forward with it. And when is what's the time scale on that? What are you looking at?
Right now it is probably spring 2022, maybe.
Okay.
Right. But it's a practical guide to modern heathenry. It's kind of an intro book, but I don't go at it from your typical
intro perspective. Right.
I look at it from a teacher's perspective. So a lot of the book is talking about historical thinking skills, how to apply those to things that you're going to read.
Yeah.
Right. And it's got all of the base stuff in it that everybody does with basics, but
yeah, it's like describing each of the gods and going into like some of the resources and what resources that we have and all that kind of stuff.
A lot of the concepts, like the concepts of the Norse soul and the worldview and that sort of thing. So
that's great. And also, you are rocking the beard, my dude.
Oh,
and this is a great show to rock the beard on, I think.
When we came on stream, everybody was like, look at the beard.
There are so many beards on this stream right now. This is a very aptly named podcast at the moment.
I thought that's why you guys had me on, was because I had the beard.
Right. No,
yeah, we look for beards and then we make friends.
Right. You! Hair on the face! We're going to be buddies. Yeah, so, anywho, chat, thank you guys for hanging out with us.
Yeah,
Wolf, you got any parting thoughts? Or like,
I want to give a shout out to all of the chat members who became members tonight.
Hell yes.
Supporting Ocean's channel is such a big deal. I want to give a shout out to all the super chats. Some of them were just super chats.
Just super chats, right?
There was no message. You guys weren't trying to like get a point across. You just wanted to help support us, and that means the world to us. I don't guess I really have a whole lot to plug. I've got a couple videos in the works. They will be. I will be. There is no might. I will be dropping 2 videos next week. I have
He
a
said it
Patreon.
live, guys. He said it live.
I've
Yep.
got
Said it
got a whole-
live.
He's got to
got
do
whole
it.
Ocean and I both made Linktree accounts so that you can get to all of our stuff a little bit easier.
You can find mine on my Twitter.
Mine is on my Twitter as well, but to say the address out loud, it's really easy. It's linktr.ee/Wolf the Red.
All run together,
then
right?
All that together.
Yep.
Oceans is the exact same.
/Ocean Keltoy.
tr.ee/Ocean Keltoy. It has all of our information on it. It has links to all of our stuff. I created a Patreon that I'm filling right now.
Awesome.
I had a few people jump in really early,
Like
quickly.
immediately as soon as you posted.
Immediately as soon as I posted it. I couldn't believe it. It meant the world to me.
Let's post a link to your Patreon in the chat.
Sure.
So let's see.
You might get to it faster than I do.
I'm going to be trying to find it through Google. I found it through Google.
Look at you, cheater.
Oh, the Google.
There it is.
But
Wolf the Red is creating heathen YouTube and creating YouTube videos and heathen content on various platforms. And he's got 2 tiers of $2 per creation and $5 per creation. He's currently got 7 patrons. Let's see if we can get that to go up a little bit, guys.
I've got some new series in the works. I'll be going through the Havamal soon, and I want to start reading sagas. You guys, in the last stream I was in, you guys said that my voice is soothing and you want to hear me read bedtime stories. Instead, I'm going to read sagas and Norse adventures to you guys, so we can all learn a little bit of history together, and then you can fall asleep to my apparently soothing voice.
Having someone smash an axe through someone's head is going to be so soothing with you reading it.
Absolutely.
Right.
It's going to take all the terror.
And then they burned the monastery to the ground. Everybody was happy. Good night.
Oh my God. Like good night moon in the form of like a heathenry or something like that. That's going to be a thing now. So
good night axe. Good night skull.
Oh, okay. Rewriting that
we're
book
doing
in
that,
my head right now. Oh my God.
Let's talk, Ryan. Let's talk.
We're about to do some stuff.
Good night, Christian monk in the Zoom.
Oh my God. Stop! You're giving dibs. Trademark, copyright.
Chat is going. It's like no. All right. Anyway, thank you everybody for hanging out. Shout out to everybody that became a member today, and hope you guys enjoyed the show. Hope this was a good educational journey in the history of heathenry in America. It is something that it's not heavily talked about, so wanted to kind of bring it out for you guys, and also bring somebody who knows his damn way around the issue, which is our good friend here, Ryan Dennison. Shout out to you, buddy.
Thank you guys for having me on. I really appreciate it. And for quelling my nerves. That was, just knowing you guys for as long as I have has made this so much easier.
Yeah, we fucking love you, man. So, thank you guys for hanging out, and remember to find a way or make one.
Go big or go home, and hold fast.